Hi, my name is Nicholas Jones, and this is my presentation on audit of place. So before we get started, I just want to go through the contents. I'll be talking initially about what, whys and whos of an audit, then go on to the audit itself, which will be broken up to the bulk of the audit information, the conclusions and the recommendations. So what is an audit? It's a structured observation of the built environment. It helps us better understand how that environment might be impacting us physically, mentally and behaviourally. And it's an opportunity to observe the local community living in that environment and to listen to them. Who's going to undertake an audit? Anyone who has an interest in the built environment. So why would you undertake an audit? Because they're useful. They help us better understand the environment that we live in. They help us quantify and qualify what issues may be within that environment before we go on to affect it. They fit in very neatly to the framework of HIAs, which are health impact assessments, and they in turn can be compiled to help us determine the impact that changes to our environment might have to our health. HIAs generally contain more than just one audit. They'll have different audits looking at different factors, whether it's walkability, bikeability, whatever it is that we're thinking may be changed, and maybe some things that we don't. They'll also might contain testing, scientific air pollution testing, traffic studies, etc. HIAs will then be, in turn, can be used by a number of groups, but particularly community groups, to advocate to government to have changes made or to stop changes being made. And governments and private companies can use them to set their policy going forward. So the audit. I've decided to do my audit on Farrer and Mawson, which is where I live. They're at the end of the Woden Valley, at the far end, just before you get to Tuggeranong. I decided to go from my house along the footpaths to Farrer local shops, and then on to Mawson, which are larger shops, more connected. Total distance of just under 4 kilometres, and the walk takes me about half an hour. I'm going to focus on the walkability of the route, the access at the precincts, both in Farrer and Mawson, and the food supply, but more than that, the sort of amenities that are available when you get to each of these places. There are different tools that you can use to test different things. I'm using the University of New South Wales Built Environment Programme toolkit. There are many others, as I said, to look at different aspects that you might use when putting together an HIA. So footpaths, they're fairly consistent in their quality throughout the walk. There are obvious signs in these pictures that undesirable, things that just built straight onto the footpath itself, which has then caused the footpath to deteriorate quicker. You've got desire lines that take off large chunks, so the path really isn't where you want it to be. Then you've also got uneven paving, which you can see from my foot. It's probably a good 25 to 30 mil, which is more than enough to trip over. The access when you get to shops themselves is fairly limited for different reasons. At Mawson, the footpath circles round Mawson without actually having an obvious route into the shopping centre. So you have to head off through the car park you can see in the photo at the top. And Farrer has paths that run up, fairly easy gradient, but you can't see the shops, and there's no way you'd actually know the shops are there unless you have local knowledge. Safety, I'm just going to split this into three groups. The pathways, there's little or no passive surveillance for the entire sort of 3.7 kilometres. In places you're very isolated, a long distance from any sort of building. There's littering graffiti along the whole route. Poor lighting. Lighting is spaced out in some places 60 metres between lampposts, and the width of the path varies wildly. It's 2 metres at the start, goes down to 1 metre as you're sort of going past Farrer, and then up to about 1.5 meters as you head into Mawson. That's going to bring you into conflict with cyclists when it's shallow. You can't always be aware. People will wander. That will be a problem. Farrer in itself is good. It's recently been redone. The pathways are good there. They're even. Speed bumps there to reduce the speed of traffic going through. Lighting is good. Mawson car parks have no pathways, so there's the opportunity for conflict with cars. Cyclists will go through on the pavements. There's nothing really to get them to go off. So there's also the opportunity for, or the risk of conflict between pedestrians and cyclists. It's generally well lit. There are parts of Mawson shops, or the precinct itself, which are pretty run down. Shops are vacant, which leads it to be a quieter, more likely that people are going to hang around there that might unnerve you. The pathways are also run down and need some repair. So transport links. So by bike, everywhere's really well serviced by the paths, Mawson and Farrer. But you get to Mawson, there's one bike rack by the Woolworths. It's pictured at the top. So you can get a maximum of 4 bikes on that. Not really good enough for a large shopping precinct. At Farrer, it's recently been redone, and yet all you have are railings to chain your bike to. That's fine, but it's not ideal. Bus stops, they lack any sort of shelter in Farrer itself, and then they wind their way to Mawson. So you're probably going to end up driving a lot further than you're going to be walking. And then when you get to Mawson, it's a walk from Athlon Drive back into Mawson itself. So that's going to cause problems. Car, great. Loads of car parks all along the route. You want to drive, absolutely fine. So foods and sort of general amenities, really good. Farrer has what you'd expect at local shops. It's still operating. It's got a cafe and an IGA. Other shops are pretty empty. There are also the standards of takeaways of Asian food. Probably not the healthiest. It is very well priced, and that could lead to a problem. Mawson, excellent. Managed to hang on to its greengrocer, hang on to its butcher, independently run, has specialty Mediterranean stores. Really, really good, diverse food sources for the local community. Worth noting at this point that with amenities, Mawson is the only place along the whole route where you will find a public toilet. Look at shade and places to socialise. Look at Mawson first. There's a picture that shows some nice sun canopies and weather protection over some benches around a fountain. Not the prettiest, dated, shabby, but they serve a purpose and they're popular. People see them. It's right next to the greengrocers. There's a really nice little buzz around that area. There's a variety of places around Mawson that offer that. That's probably the busiest little square. Farrer, the frontages face north. the awning's insufficient, as you can see from the photo. Slightly better if you want to stand right next to the wall in summer, but it's still not going to encourage you to socialise. You just want to get in and out. Benches there are in full sun and just cushion scattered, not really in any place that's relevant. There is a cafe there, very popular, good cafe, destination shop, but that's sort of luck that they've come there, really. Pathways, once you get to Mawson and head on for the extra 1.5 kilometres get to Farrer and head on the extra 1.5 kilometres to Mawson, there's no shade. There are trees, but they're not close enough to the park to offer anything. Some of them are young and will grow up and offer this in the future. Right now, there's nothing. It's hot, and so it feels like a long walk. To conclude, the pathways, the main issues I'm seeing is the isolation and safety on the pathways, mostly from a personal security sense. They're very isolated. There's well-lit areas, and then you head off into darkness, as you can see on the picture. That's probably why I will see 1 or 2 people maximum if I walk into Mawson, which is probably once or twice a week. The upkeep's poor. There's a real feeling that there's been a set and forget aspect to this. They've been laid down. They've never been reviewed. They're upkept. The upkeep happens sort of as and when, and they're just looking tired. Farrer, I've had some money spent on it in the last decade. It's aesthetically pleasing. It's safe, but it lacks essential facilities. Not having a toilet is a real issue, and if you were looking at this audit in terms of an HIA, for example, they're in the process of building. Goodwin are building a very large elderly people's residence in Farrer. They're not going to be able to walk anywhere because of that lack of toilet. They walk up to the shop, they'd be forced to use the RGA's private toilets or go into the cafe and use theirs. Mawson has pretty poor connections for anything but a car, but shops are excellent. Again, it's been built. Very little has happened to it in the past 40 years, and it really just needs some bit of TLC, tender loving care. Should be good. So recommendations from the audit. It's really about improving the connections between the footpaths and the shopping areas, both at Mawson and Farrer. And then the connections between the public transport and the shopping centres themselves, particularly at Mawson. Upkeep past constant battle. It's about money. And then really you need to look at further research into the improvement of the walkability between these centres. It's not a great distance, and it really is the sort of thing that we should be looking to encourage people to walk. Once, twice a week,